Hello, and welcome to National 5 Modern Studies. Before we start looking at the content of the course, the best way to start is actually to look at what the exam will look like for yourselves in May next year. What I've brought up is I've brought up the 2019 paper, and I thought the best thing to do would actually be to go through it all, just to give you an idea of what the course will look like when you actually finish it and how it's all going to be assessed. Now, as you can see straight away, the exam is 2 hours and 20 minutes. That's roughly 45 minutes per section. Now, as we look through it, there are 3 sections. There's one about democracy, there's one about social issues, and there's one about international issues. As you can see, there are 2 topics in each. However, we only do one in each. So there's a range of choices throughout Scotland. For the democracy section, we do part B. So we do democracy in the UK, which is page 3. Now, you'll also notice at the end of each section, there is also a question which sits by itself. 7, 14 and 21. Everyone in Scotland does this question as well, but we'll come to that as we look through the paper. When we do section 2, we look at part D, crime and the law. So that's pages 8 and 9. And then the last section we do part E, which is world powers, because we do the USA. Now, also to note is, all the topic section areas are not worth the same number of marks. That is because in one of the sections there will be an 8-mark question, and we'll have a look at that when that comes up. So, going straight through, before we start, very important, use black or blue ink. On all exams, expect to use ink unless you're typing it obviously on a computer. You will not be using pencil. We also like that at the end of topic tests, and anything else when we do the estimates and things, everything should be done in pen, not in pencil. Very important, especially when we're trying to photocopy things. So, as said, democracy in Scotland, the United Kingdom. We go straight to page 3. You'll be looking for it at the top. It'll say democracy in the UK. It'll say part B. And you can see marks on the sides and also your questions. So, question 4 says, describe in detail 2 reserved matters the UK Parliament has responsibility for. So you'd have to give 2 different reserved matters. For example, you might talk about defence, you might talk about foreign affairs. You would then describe what that is, and then finally you give it a relevant example as well. And we'll come on to that when we look at some of the questions as we start the course properly. Question 5, describe in detail 2 rights individuals have in democracy. So that would be 2 different rights you would have. And then question 6, explain in detail 2 reasons why political parties use the media during election campaigns in the UK. So you'll notice straight away, for knowledge and understanding, there are 2 different types of questions, describe and explain. And we'll go through those as we come up against them, as we go through the content of the course. But they're answered slightly differently. Now, key things here, 4, 6 and 6 marks. That is the minimum number of sentences we're looking for in the answer. And as we'll see, as many of you said in 3rd year, didn't we do PE questions? This is a PEE question indeed. So we'll be looking at paragraphs for this. We then move on to question 7. Question 7, which everyone in Scotland does, looks very similar. It's a conclusion question. And it even tells you what you might be looking for, gives you the 4 conclusions. It's worth 10 marks, no knowledge needed, but we have booklets for those and we'll explain them as we come to it. But skills questions are normally the ones that people catch on quite quickly to. Once you've done that section, you go into the section 2, miss out the social issues and look for crime and the law. That's what we're looking for. So, what you can see here is we have a describe about biological factors. We have a describe about how crime is a problem, and it's worth 4 and 6 marks, so that'd be 4 sentences and 6 sentences. And then we've got this question here. Question 13 is an 8-mark question. There will be one 8-mark explain question somewhere in the paper. Now, the best thing is they actually give you a choice of A or B. Do not do both. I do see this when I mark it sometimes. You pick one of them, and for this you need a minimum or a maximum of 3 reasons in your answer. Sometimes people give 4 because they're not really sure if one of their answers is right or not, but as long as they do the minimum 3, the potential is there for 8. And this is worth 8 marks. That means at least 8 sentences. You can give 9 with 3 examples throughout. We then move on to question 14, which everyone in Scotland does again. And for question 14, it's a support and oppose the view of someone. Now, many in 3rd year will have already done these questions before. And you can see it's worth 10 marks and no knowledge needed again. And that's the end of section 2. When we go to section 3, we do world powers. So, key thing here is, in your answer you must state the world power you have studied. We do the USA. If you do not mention the country you studied and it isn't clear in your answer, you will get 0 marks. They are very, very tight on this. Make sure you start your question, the world power I have studied is the USA, and then answer your question. The second question you can see is an explain, and the third question is another explain, and they're worth 6, 6, and 4 marks. So 4 sentences, 6 sentences, 6 sentences, and then we move on to the very last question of the paper. We must miss out the world issues. It's question 21. And some of you will recognise this straight away. This looks like an option choice question. That's because it is an option choice question. You have to choose one of the 2 candidates, explain why, and also why you rejected the last candidate. And at the end, it will say end of question paper. So this one's 10 marks. Once that is finished, the paper is done. Okay, so that's just a whistle-stop tour of what the paper will look like. But we'll learn more as we start looking at the content in the next lesson. Thank you.